Welcome to Up on Game presents Taylor Scouting. Coach Randy Taylor is bringing his 40-plus years of knowledge to you. This is Taylor Scouting. And now, here's Coach Randy Taylor.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. This is Coach Randy Taylor, Coach Taylor Scouting podcast. I'm with the Up on Game Network, LeVar Arrington's Up on Game Network. I got to always give him some credit because he did a great thing and created this Up on Game Network. And what we do here in Taylor Scouting is we talk college football, we talk recruiting, football in general. I get to use my background to help parents and prospects and even high school coaches and folks who want to learn about this process and maybe hear some stories. I want to thank, I got to thank young lady Katrina for getting Kiki and I into our hotel room in time to do this podcast. So we are at a hotel traveling, and I am getting to talk to my old friend and a great longtime football coach, recruiting coordinator, man of all seasons. Coach Gary Bernardi has been a big influence on my career, bringing me to UCLA in 1996 and helping me develop my tools in the college football recruiting world. So I just want to thank you, Gary, for joining us today. Welcome, Coach Gary Bernardi. How are you, Coach?
Very good. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it. Those days were wonderful days at UCLA at that point in time, and we had a great experience in winning a lot of football games at that time. The one thing a couple things, Randy, if I could just say this to start with, is if there are some coaches and particularly parents out there and recruits, I suggest that you listen intently. And I suggest after you listen, that you go back and watch and listen again and take some notes, because we don't always retain everything that's discussed. And if there's something that we talk about that could be beneficial, then it's worth going back and taking another look-see. And wherever you go to school, you're going to be asked to take notes every day in your positional meeting and usually in the team meeting. So it's something that you might have to learn to grasp a little bit. Randy, the second thing I wanted to make sure that the coaches, the recruits, and the parents know that there are no scouts in college football. The positional coaches, the 10 coaches, are the ones that recruit. So when you hear or somebody says, or somebody would say to me, there was a scout from your school watching our game last week, that's not true. There are no scouts. There's the 10 coaches, the head coach, and the recruiting office that watches film. And the coaches go out and recruit at the high schools. And the number one person they're going to talk to is the high school coach. And if that particular coach from a particular school, wherever it may be, doesn't talk to the high school coach first, he's probably making a mistake, because that's the guy that we would think knows the most about you as an individual, as a person on campus, and as a football player. And then from that point on, obviously, if a recruiter is being thorough, he's going to talk to the teachers on campus or a teacher on campus, other coaches in the area, as well as maybe a security person on campus. So being said, Randy, we can begin, but I want to make that point clear because I'm not sure people really understand who's the recruiters and who's not.
Coach, that's why we're doing this podcast, and so I want everyone to kind of take note of what just happened. This is what because I did once in a while would sit on some of these coaches' meetings, and I would sneak into Coach Bernardi's meeting with whether it was the O line or the tight ends or whoever he was working with, and they were always the most prepared because Coach Bernardi was the guy that was explaining everything so that they couldn't mess it up. That make notes, go back and see it again, do all these things over and over again, and so. Whether it was a blocking assignment or footwork or whatever it might be, Coach Bernardi was one of those coaches that I'll always remember as having his kids, his players, disciplined, knowing what they're supposed to do, their intelligence, all those things were kind of developed through Coach Bernardi in a step by step method, and that's really the way coaching should be. So thanks, I appreciate you getting us started with that because it's very important and really true what Coach Bernardi. So let's take all of his advice today to heart and write down your notes and go back and watch it again. And so thanks, Coach. Coach has had a long and successful career as a coach and recruiting coordinator. How many years in this business?
I just retired March 1st. It's 47 years at 8 different colleges on 1AA level, the 27 years in the Pac-12, and then in the Mountain West also.
Where did you go to high school, Coach? Where did you start your high school playing and coaching?
I went to Monroe High School in the San Fernando Valley, just north of UCLA, and went to College of the Canyons, went to Cal State Northridge. And as you know, Randy, in those days, when you injured your knees and you were a 4.7 running back to start with, it was downhill from there. But, I wasn't blessed to have great ability to play at a high level in college football, but I loved football. And there was no ifs, ands, and buts of what I was going to do. That's what I was going to do. I was going to coach, and honestly, I wanted to get to coach college football. I did not care about going to the NFL, and 47 years later, I didn't care about going to the NFL, and that's obviously not any negative direction towards that. I just enjoyed college football. I enjoyed the traditions, and I enjoyed recruiting. I enjoyed recruiting good players. I enjoyed the relationship with parents, and most of all with the players on the team.
What's yours? Give us some of those Pac-12 and so you started out after your early coaching days when you finally got into the Mountain West, and give us kind of those schools and
I was in 1976. I was at Fountain Valley High School in Orange County, and fortunately, it was a school that got a lot of attention at that time. And in 1980, I had a chance to go to the University of Arizona in Tucson as a part-time coach. You work full-time, but it was a part-time title. And I was there for a month, and Coach Mason, Tony Mason, who I'm thankful gave me the opportunity to come there, he was fired because of various violations. And I had the chance to go back to Fountain Valley with the help of Mike Milner. And I chose to stay and see what happened at Arizona. And God bless. And I got Coach Smith came in, Larry Smith, and we visited, and he retained me. And I ended up working for 13 years with Coach Smith at 7 years at University of Arizona. And then we went to USC '88, and we were at SC for 6 years. And then then we were released after 6 years, and we had a great opportunity. We went to 3 Rose Bowl games and had a chance to play in Notre Dame for a national championship. And I had a great experience. Then I had a chance to go work for Coach Donahue at UCLA. And between Coach Donahue and Larry Smith is where the backbone of my career began. And obviously, I was grateful to Coach Donahue and spent 10 years at UCLA. Randy, that's where we met, and worked with some wonderful coaches everywhere I've been. And after that, I went to Northern Arizona for 1 year. Sometimes we don't always have a choice in what develops in the staff in college football. But I did. Went to Northern Arizona and coached the offensive line. And from there, I went to UNLV with Mike Sanford for 5 years and coached the offensive line there. From there, I went to San Jose State, coached the offensive line for Mike McIntyre. In 2012, he was the NCAA WAC Coach of the Year. We were 11-2 and went to a bowl. And from there, we went to Colorado. And I was at Colorado for 6 years. And when I left Colorado, I was fortunate enough. I had an association with Rocky Long, and had the opportunity to go work for Coach Long and then for Brady Hoke for the last 3 years. And wonderful, great experience. Everywhere I've been, I've had a good experience. And I think that's one of the key points parents, coaches, and recruits should understand. There's a lot of good places out there to go to school. And without a doubt, there is a place for every young man to go play college football if you're willing to pay the price and do the work and take care of your academic responsibilities and take care of your off the field responsibilities. And I think we grow up in Los Angeles, in Arizona, in different parts of the country, thinking that the Big Ten and the ACC and the MAC and the WAC, or I should say the Mountain West Conference and the Pac-12, that's the only places you can play. There are places all over the country where you can play college football. It's just not what you grew up watching and anticipating and desiring. But if you really love college football and you really want to play, there is a place for you to play. And make no mistakes that you can find the place, and everybody recruits all over the country. Somebody, find a place. Is it you come from a real good program in a high school that has a lot of success and a lot of notoriety? You might think it's an insult to play somewhere lower than the Pac-12 or the Mountain West or the Big Ten or the MAC. But if you love football, you're going to go and play and have success. And the thing that you have to understand, and parents understand, and coaches understand, and recruits, if you go play college football and you get a degree, you're making yourself marketable for the rest of your life. There's not a lot of people that walk in to get interviews for jobs that have played college football and have a degree in whatever you want to earn your degree in. There is a place. But you have to understand, you have to be realistic. You have to understand that there's so many scholarships in the Pac-12 and in the Mountain West. There's not an abundance of them. And everybody's on the same playing field as far as scholarships go. But if you really want to play, you can go play at Occidental, or you can go to Northern Arizona in the Big Sky at Portland State or Montana State, Sac State, and have a great career that might lead you to another level. And I think sometimes it's hard to understand that, and it's hard to accept that. And you have to be realistic. Mom and dad, you have to be realistic. And that's hard.
You're doing exactly what I hope you would do, because there's no better guy to give prospects, and especially parents, the do's and don'ts of the recruiting process. And I'm going to set you up with a couple more thoughts, but you have hit on exactly what I was hoping you would do, and really appreciate a lot of this. And so let me ask a few questions just to, because your son, Joe, went through this process. And so not only do you have it from the coaching side, but you have it from the parent side of how this process works. And so put on your dad hat for a second and let us talk about Joe's decision and a football prospect's decision academically. We'll talk about camps and visits, and then the reality of level of play, like you kind of started to get into.
Well, we moved from a prominent school in Southern California at Hart High School when Joe was going to be a senior, and we went to Flagstaff, Arizona, and my daughters and my son had a great experience there. But during that summer, he went to a camp at Fresno State, and he hit it off with Pat Hill because Pat liked what Joe brought to the table in terms of his intensity and his desire to compete and his toughness, and offered him a scholarship. And so over the summer, he debated, about accepting it or committing. And I told Joe, I said, Joe, Fresno State's a good program. And I said, but let's make sure we got one thing straight here. If you commit to Fresno State, you're going to Fresno State. And I told Brianna, my daughter, she had a chance to go to Kentucky to play softball. And because at that time, then I was at UNLV coaching football. I said, if you want to come to UNLV and play softball, that's great. But you're not changing and going to Kentucky. Where you commit, you're going. So you better give it a lot of thought. And they ended up going to those places and having great careers and doing well academically. And Joe's gone into coaching, and Brianna has got a master's degree from in athletic management, but she went and married a coach, and she's a nurse, and she's in Bowling Green, Kentucky now. And my son Joe is the offensive line coach at Troy State in Alabama. But I think, Randy, and we talked about some of these things. I made a few notes here, and if you want to cut me off, you can cut me off. But I'm pretty adamant about it, and I feel pretty secure in what I'm saying and what I believe in. And in 47 years, I've made probably over 350 home visits. I've recruited kids from all different parts of the country to different schools. Currently, there's 4 linemen in the NFL that I coached, but there's guys that I recruited that are in the NFL, and but the guys that are really successful. Randy, you were at UCLA when we had Jonathan Ogden and Mike Safer, and when I was at SC, we had Tony Pacelli, and we had Pat Harlow, and David Cadigan, and these linemen and these tight ends that played in the NFL. And at the end of the day, football was important to them. Football was, I'm going to tell you, when we had Pat Harlow and Tony Baselli lined up against Junior Seau and Willie McGinnis in one-on-one pass pro, those guys competed like you can't believe. And you just got out of the way and let them play because they're so competitive. There's nobody that I've recruited or been part of that was more intense than those type of guys. Jonathan Ogden was fabulous. He was intense, but in a little bit more mild-mannered way. But when that game turned on, man, phenomenal. But the quarterbacks, I mean, Troy Aikman, Rodney Peete, Todd Marinovich, when that game started, Todd Marinovich was as competitive as anybody. And so you have to understand, if you want to play college football, those things they come into play. There's three things to start with. Is you might be a good football player, and you might be dynamic, and you might be fast and strong. But if your positional coach does not trust you and that you're going to do things right, you're not going to play. Because that coach has to put his butt on the line for you. And if he can't trust you, you're not playing. And when the game is being played and it's a tough situation, you better put the guy in the game that you trust. If you're not tough, you're not going to be successful. And if you're not coachable, the recruiter might as well pass on you because you got to be coachable.
All right, keep rolling, buddy. I'm loving it. Keep rolling.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this. Okay, I'm sitting with Larry Cook. You know who I'm talking about, Randy. And we're talking in my office one day. Larry Cook was the personnel director for the New England Patriots. Okay, and I said, tell me what you're looking for. He said, Gary, don't fall in love with looks and size. Fall in love with character, toughness, attitude, competitiveness. Then the Patriots asked, what's the 40-yard dash time? You can't go wrong with the character, with toughness, attitude, and competitiveness. Obviously, you got to be a good athlete and have all those things, but you have to have character, you have to have toughness, you have to have an attitude that this is important. If it's not important, but it's important to the coach, it makes it difficult. Let me just give you these couple statistics. Last year, there's 262 players drafted in the NFL draft. Okay. Last year, there was over 1 million high school football players. 6% of those high school football players are playing college football. 1.6% of those high school athletes are playing in the NFL. 1.6% of high school athletes will make it to the NFL. So when I say you better go to school and get your degree and have success on the field and make yourself marketable, those are the statistics I'm thinking about. And I know that everybody thinks their son is special and maybe their quarterback is special, and there are some special ones out there, but the opportunity to play in the NFL is very limited. 262 players drafted last year. That's all. So you have to make yourself marketable. Here is a great example of being marketable. Okay, when we were at UCLA, all right, we had a receiver that we drafted from Baldwin Park. He was a 3.8 student, wonderful family, sharp kid. Okay. He played defensive back, played receiver at UCLA, was drafted in the 5th round for the New England Patriots. Okay. He's played 15 years for the New England Patriots, one team. All right. He was the receiver when he was drafted. Here's what his statistics are. He made 185 tackles on special teams in the last 15 years. He's caught one pass for 42 yards. He's run 2 times for 11 yards. He's been with the New England Patriots for 15 years. He's been on 3 Super Bowl championships, probably made well over $10 million. He was a receiver. He's caught one pass. He plays on every special teams. He's a special teams captain. He made himself marketable in special teams. And he's had a wonderful career. And I believe Matthew Slater is considering or decided to retire in January. But my point being to everybody, he made himself marketable by playing special teams. He was a leader in the locker room. He was a leader on the field. He was a team captain. He caught one pass, carried the ball twice. He made himself marketable because of special teams.
How do parents, Coach, how do parents figure out the level of their son's play, where they fit? What tell a parent what to look for, maybe how to do this?
I think this is really a good question, Randy, and this is really an important time. Okay, on April 15th, spring recruiting starts. Okay, and coaches will come to schools. Coaches will contact coaches. They'll come watch practices, watch some of these combines at different schools, and they're going to talk to the coach. Okay, what I really believe, and you might see it a little bit differently, Randy, and that's okay, but I really think that going to camps is important. But what's most important is going to the right camp. And so at the end of May, if your son is interested, or as a young man, you're interested in being recruited, then I would have a heart-to-heart talk with your high school coach and ask him, in this period, did you get any feeling, any information that might say where I might fit in? And if you didn't, then I would suggest that you attend 2 to 4 camps at different levels, meaning maybe a Big Sky camp, maybe a Mountain West camp, maybe a Pac-12 camp. Okay? But don't go spend your money at 7 camps and they're all Pac-12 camps. Just because you went to a parochial school and your grandfather and uncle loved Notre Dame, if you're not a player that can play at Notre Dame, don't go to that camp when you have absolutely no opportunity to go to school there. So being specific in that and realistic in that manner. If you're an offensive lineman and you're 6 feet, you're not going to play you're not going to get recruited in the Pac-12. That's just the way it is. Now, if you want to make yourself marketable, okay, and you're a young guy, play more than one sport. If you're a 3-sport athlete, that makes a recruiter or a college coach's eyes pop open. Wrestle. That is a magical word to a lot of coaches. It displays a lot of perseverance, toughness, attitude. Those are things that you can do to help yourself. Play on special teams, as I talked about Matthew. Okay, be a playmaker in special teams. All right. Your body language. If you go to a camp, what kind of body language do you bring to the table? Are you a guy that's pouting? Are you a guy that's complaining? Okay. Are you running around playing fast and hard? You're dealing with professional people that have done this for a lot of years. They know what they're looking for. And if you see a guy that's pouting, complaining, doesn't run around, doesn't make plays, that's an indicator. That's a go ahead.
Coach, can parents influence the recruiting process?
The parents can influence the recruiting process by making sure their son is doing well in school, making sure their son is making good decisions away from the football field, making sure their son is staying out of trouble and doing what's right and hanging around with people that have his best interest in mind. And then maybe providing the finances for that young man to go to a few camps. I think
Can they hurt?
Really helpful.
Can they hurt the recruiting process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's kind of like we tell our children sometimes we want to be, they should be seen and not heard sometimes. You know, that's one thing I would just say, Randy, in terms of a home visit. If you ever have a chance to have a home visit and somebody come to your house as a parent or as a coach, okay, and a recruit, make sure that you are hospitable, make sure you're on time, make sure that if a coach is in your home, you do not have the TV on. Okay, make sure you're a good listener. Nobody wants to hear about when you played college football 42 years ago. Okay, ask intelligent questions. Okay, recruits, how do you treat your mom and dad and your brothers and sisters in front of a college coach? How do you behave at home in front of adults? Those are things to keep in mind. Are you here's one thing, Randy, you know this, okay? If parents, recruits, high school coaches, if I'm a recruiter and I go to a school and I'm looking at an offensive lineman, I'm looking at a tight end, how many play, and I don't have his jersey number, I don't know. I just go that I want to go see this tight end, or I want to see this lineman or this DB, but I don't really know his name. I don't know much about him. How long does it take me to find him on the field? If it takes me a long time to search him out because he doesn't stand out, then he's probably not good enough for me to recruit. If I'm watching film, or Randy, you're watching film, and it takes me a half an hour to find out who's the offensive lineman I should be recruiting, then that guy is probably not good enough. If you're on film, you better show up on film because you are busting your butt. And you're doing all the things that people want to see in terms of effort, second effort down the field, running around, making plays. You're on special teams. Here's another thing. If the game is on the line, especially in a game you're playing your arch rival, the game is on the line. If you're a big-time player, you better be on the field. If you're a big-time player and you're not on the field at a critical time to determine the game, that's a red flag. And that might lead back to the coach doesn't trust you. If you spend all the time on the practice field when the coach is watching you, or at a game, at a high school game, and you're too busy talking, trash talking, pouting, arguing with the referee, then you're not spending all your time and energy playing fast, running and hitting and making plays. That's
Hey,
what your job is.
absolutely. Is there a time in high school that the players should be preparing for the recruiting process? What should a freshman be thinking about? How do you take
Freshman ought to think about being the best player he can be as a sophomore. And that means if the coach has a organized weight program, running program, he should be in there. You don't have to worry about, especially for an offensive lineman. And I know that recruiting has changed. And Randy, we've seen it change. But there was a time you wouldn't even look at an offensive lineman's junior film. You want to wait to see what he looked like as a senior. And I understand that's changed now. And with the camps, that's changed. But if you're a young guy, you better get bigger and stronger, and you have to become more athletic. Bigger in the terms of weight for an offensive lineman is not better as a 10th grader, as an 11th grader. Okay. Ultimately, if you play at a high level in college football, you're going to be over 300 pounds. Okay. But as a young man, work on being a good athlete, making yourself stronger so you're a better player in your sophomore season. I don't, there's all these characteristics that you have to work on, and play other sports. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, if I'm a recruiter and I talk to your coach, and that coach tells me he plays 3 sports, he's a star in 2 sports, or he tells me he's a wrestler and he went to the state wrestling championships, that's pretty impressive, as well as being a good football player. And the guy's a 3-point student. Well, that's a lot of that's a lot of positive red flags to evaluate.
Let's wrap it up with what you just touched on. What kind of a student, what grade point average would you like to see? All those, those years and test scores aren't quite as big a deal anymore, but
right.
What kind of a student are you looking for? And we'll wrap it up.
Well, I have one other thing to contribute, Randy. Okay. That I think it's important that it take 15 seconds. But you just want, number one, everybody would like to be recruiting a 3-point or better student. And if you're recruiting a quarterback, an offensive lineman, a guy that has to make a lot of decisions in the game, the better the GPA, the better off. The head coach is going to like it. The academic people are going to like it. Not everybody's a 3-point student, but everybody can go to class. Everybody can be diligent about doing their schoolwork and take, if I have a question about a guy, I'm going to go ask his counselor. And if he's got 15 absences, that's going to tell me something. That's a red flag. Those things are important. But you remember, as an assistant coach recruiting, I got to tell the head coach, I got to go and present you to the head coach. And I'm going to be careful because my butt's on the line. And so your GPA, that's important. The last thing, Randy, okay, there's also negatives. I'm going to just tell you, okay, if I have to come back to the head coach and say, this recruit has police issues. This recruit was asked to leave the team because of an assault issue, whether you were right or wrong. Okay, if this recruit was thrown off the team for stealing or drug issues, that's an automatic cross him off. Put a black line through that, and we're crossing them off. Those are the negatives that are going to get you in big trouble. You got to be careful that you are doing the right things and you're surrounded with people that care about you. So you're doing the right things off the field and off campus.
Coach, I always love listening to you. You're in that the Vince Lombardi category for me. You always have good stories. You remember the kids. You remember situations. I really enjoy listening to you talk, and I'm so glad to have you on here to be able to give us your opinions and ideas. And I know the kids and the coaches and the parents better watch this a couple times to get everything out of it. And so, Coach, I want to appreciate you being on with me, and hope to keep in touch and maybe see you in Vegas soon.
I hope so, Randy. Thank you. And anything that you or I or we as coaches can do to help young men and help the parents understand the process is well worth the time.
All right, it's time to wrap up the show. This is Taylor Scouting. I'm Coach Randy Taylor, the Up On Game Network. You can rate and review our podcast. You can go to YouTube and watch us at Up On Game Presents Taylor Scouting. Feel free to go to any of our social platforms. Go to anywhere you get your podcasts for Up On Game Presents, Up On Game Network, iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, right wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Up On Game Network, and you can follow me on Twitter at rtaylorfbscout. Sure appreciate y'all.